Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning is looking at current events that have made the headlines and organizations in our community that are working to help make a difference when it comes to those issues. My first guest represents an organization that has spent the last 20+ years as a local outreach organization that's dedicated to promoting an accurate understanding of Islam and Muslim women. Janan Najeeb is a founding member and the current president of the Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate your time and being here. And Janan, right off the bat, you left your job as a microbiologist at UW-Milwaukee due to what you felt was a tremendous need to bridge the gap between the erroneous misperception or perception of Islam and Muslims in society and the actual beliefs and practices of the vast majority of the world's Muslims. Talk about the importance of you being able to do that.
Right. I'm actually a graduate of UWM, but I felt it was important to do because it probably started after I had children, and I realized there's still so much misinformation about Islam, about Muslim women, and having I grew up in Milwaukee, and I felt that, wow, after all of these years, there's still so much wrong information. And I felt that it was important for my children to live in a community and in a society where they were understood.
Yes, I agree with that. And something that has consumed a lot of your time lately, literally days after Donald Trump took office, he signed an executive order that banned travel from 7 Muslim nations that he deemed as countries of concern for terrorism. And he also signed this executive order to keep refugees from entering the country for 120 days. That order, needless to say, sparked protests globally, and at that time, what was going through your mind as far as what you needed to do as a representative of your organization?
Well, immediately I thought, wow, this has to be unconstitutional. It just does not seem that it is consistent with the values of the United States and America and the country that I grew up in. And so I felt that, especially because he targeted, first of all, Muslim countries, and then he also said, but if they happen to be Christians in those countries, we would let them come here. And so it was obvious that what we were dealing with was a president that was setting really a litmus test for faith. And that was going to determine whether you were going to be allowed in this country or not. And that's exactly what we do not stand for. And so one of the first things I did was really obviously try to inform myself as the head of an organization, look at a lot of the national civil rights and advocacy organizations and Muslim organizations to kind of see what this all meant. And one of the first things we did was actually we held a press conference. And we brought together many elected officials, religious leaders, civil rights organizations, and we basically said, you know what, we are all here together and we disagree with this and we're going to stand against this because this is not acceptable.
Yes, I admire your strength in so many ways. And the thing is, since then, a federal judge has suspended Trump's order, and at the time of this taping, we're kind of like just waiting to see what happened. It has to be heard in the courts, and it could very well go to the highest court. So we'll just wait and see what happens. But with the way things are and where they stand now, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad that this is being challenged right now, and I'm very hopeful that the judicial system will be able to declare this as being something that is unacceptable and unconstitutional. So meanwhile, I think about really a lot of the individuals that potentially are going to be held up and may not be able to come to this country, whether it's refugees, and we have always welcomed refugees in our country. country, or immigrants and individuals, for example, that have served our military and have worked with our military, and now it looks like we will be turning our backs on them. And I think that's also very dangerous. I think that all of these, the slew of executive orders that came flying out within the first week were not thought out, and there was no thought given to the repercussions of our military that's all over the world.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you on the whole concept of how much thought was given to this, because you had a few of the countries that was on the ban list, included Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. But what I found interesting is that the last extremists to actually attack on U.S. soil came from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Lebanon, which were not on the list. So it kind of didn't make sense if, in fact, you were banning these countries or nations based off of extremist terrorism. So here we have some 15,000 Muslims who live here in southeastern Wisconsin. With you being the head of your organization, what were some of the stories that you were hearing about people who were held up and could not enter the country at that time?
Well, there were not that many individual stories that I knew of. My husband's a physician here of Syrian descent, and it sort of dashed our hopes of being able to bring my sister-in-law and her children. But there were also some refugees, some Syrian refugees and others that were really awaiting family members to come and to arrive here. And so the idea that, you know, there's a potential of never being able to reunite some of these families is definitely a concern. And I think you brought up a very important point, because one of the things that did not make any sense is the fact that refugees coming from any of these countries have not conducted any act of terrorism.
Right.
There's no evidence at all. And also, you know, in all of these countries, President Trump doesn't have any, you know, any buildings or business dealings, whereas Saudi Arabia and some of these others, he does have business dealings. And so, you know, what is really, what is the criteria for deciding who we're going to prevent refugees from coming from what countries?
Yeah, and some of the people who have committed acts of terrorism in our country were investigated by the FBI at one time, and those people still weren't stopped from committing acts that either injured or killed individuals. So there needs to be, in my opinion, a lot more time and effort put into investigating the people that you know have ill will and are already here in our country. So it's a lot, and I think that it was a lot for many Americans like you and I to digest, because it's so different from what we all grew up hearing and knowing about what this country stands for.
Right, absolutely. And I also think it's really quite short-sighted. One of the things we're talking about, the potential and you know, the minuscule potential of refugees committing acts of terrorism, yet we're not vetting, for example, our military that is coming back from some of these war zones with post-traumatic stress disorder and committing acts of violence in our country. We are not vetting, for example, some of these organizations. There are Christian militias out there. There are white supremacist groups. Here in Milwaukee, we know that the worst terrorist act was committed by a white supremacist in Oak Creek.
And so, Sikh temple, absolutely.
And we're ignoring all of that, and we're just concentrating really on immigrants, on refugees, on people of color, and we're ignoring all of these other individuals.
You're absolutely right, and an important thing that you bring out is the concept of so many people who have committed violent acts that have really devastated people all over the country has also had to do with mental health. So we need to put more time and effort into making sure individuals are treated, and we pick up on the signs that people need help when they are showing clearly signs that are not, what people are used to seeing that know those individuals. So when Trump was still campaigning, Othman Atta, who is from the Islamic Society of Milwaukee, and I just found out when you sat down that that's your brother, so it's really a small world. He paid us a visit, and when asked about Trump potentially putting a ban on Muslims, because back then in the summer it was just talk, here's what he had to say.
It disturbs me that a presidential candidate would continue to espouse that kind of rhetoric. I believe that it shows that he understands not only very little about Islam, he understands very little about the U.S. Constitution. And so I think that, in my personal view, doesn't really qualify him to be a presidential candidate. I think that, again, he's trying to show to certain members of his supporters that he's tough, and he's going to show them what he can do. And again, it doesn't make any sense. Law enforcement will tell you it doesn't make any sense. People in the military will tell you it doesn't make any sense. But for his supporters, it makes sense. And I think that says a little bit about him and some of the people who are attracted to his extremist rhetoric.
And the first thing that you notice is that he said you would have to think it's unconstitutional, and you would think that that would have automatically put Trump out of the running. But here we are months later, and that's not the case. He is the president of the United States, and as Americans, we do have to, at some point try to have a better understanding of his approach of things and come together, because there is this big divide, but at the same time, it's things like this that make it extremely hard for those who don't necessarily agree. What are your thoughts on what your brother had to say?
Well, I think also that should have been the criteria for him not being elected, just when he started talking about Muslim ban. But it's a concern, I think, especially because what has happened in this country is that he has really attracted individuals that for the most part have been below the surface. He has filled his cabinet with some of the most racist individuals there are, and I think that that's also what is informing what is happening today and some of the decisions. And I also think about what a double standard. I imagine if President Barack Obama had come in and within the first week, 2 weeks in office, had just signed one executive order after another, what kind of turmoil would this country be in? And would that be acceptable to the Congress at that time? So I think definitely that should have been a criteria to say that this individual is not qualified to be president.
Yeah, and just to think that it's only been weeks, and I'm thinking, gosh, we are 4 years. So, and I know there are some people that are probably watching who are in total disagreement with us, but that is the beauty of America.
Absolutely.
We all have an opinion, and we can speak that opinion. And there were many colleges and businesses that were affected by this so-called ban. And just recently, I was intrigued that the owner of Nordstrom decided to pull Donald Trump and his daughter Ivanka's brand from Nordstrom because he said his father was an immigrant, and had he not been able to come here and live his dream, then Nordstrom would have never existed. And there are so many stories just like that.
Right, and I think that including also with Nordstrom and some of these other places, is that there has been really a grassroots movement by individuals to boycott those products and to boycott the businesses that are working with the Trump brand. And once again, this is an example of our democracy in action, and it's something that we can definitely do. But again, you talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. When you prevent a lot of immigrants from coming, what obviously our president doesn't know is just the sheer number of individuals, of really high caliber individuals in the tech industry, in medical industry, in the medical field, in a lot of these different areas that come from other countries, sometimes for conferences, sometimes for certain periods of time, for training, oftentimes to work in a lot of these industries. So a ban of this type would have devastating effect on a lot of different companies, especially the tech industry.
Absolutely, and it's really this melting pot of people coming from all over the globe wanting to be here in America. That's what puts us at the top of the list with so many things. And there was a young lady, a little girl that was flying from one of the banned nations who was coming to America for a heart surgery that was based on life or death for her. And luckily this ban was put on hold and suspended, but I think that her family was able to come over before that because they were granted special permission. But it's those type of things that really shine a light on why this type of thing can't continue to be this way. Right,
and I think what people don't realize is that individuals, whether it's students that are coming to this country to study, or individuals that are coming here for travel, or individuals that are here to work for periods of time or to teach at our universities, they become ambassadors for the United States. They really spread goodwill about the United States. So when we prevent that also from happening, we are just simply isolating ourselves, and that's never good.
Yeah, and of course we all want the best security for our country.
Oh, absolutely.
But I just don't know if this is the way to do it. As we wrap up, I just want our viewers at home to know a little bit more about your background. You are pretty amazing. Not only do you direct the Islamic Resource Center, you founded the Milwaukee Muslim Film Festival, and last year you became the first Muslim in Wisconsin to open the floor of the state legislature with a prayer. So I just thought those things were worthy of mentioning. Finally, what is your message for women in general? Because I think that all of us relate as women, regardless of race or background or religion. We're women at the end of the day. So what's your message as we wrap up?
I think especially in the kind of environment, and the national sentiments that we have right now, I think as women, we really are the ones that are concerned about our families. We're concerned about each other. We see the big picture. We often, look at a peaceful way of resolving things, and I think it's really important for us to stand together and to really hold our government accountable, especially if they plan to do something that we see as absolutely bigoted or racist or misogynistic or whatever it is that does not represent America. And I think that we have the power to do that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure talking to you this
morning. Thank you for having me.
Janan Najeeb is a founding member and current president of the Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition. For more information, you can contact their office at 414-727-4900 or visit mmwconline.org. When we return to our Issues Milwaukee, we'll switch our focus to an organization that's goal is to end hunger in our community. They're considered Milwaukee's free and local food bank and Wisconsin's leading anti-hunger organization. We'll find out more about what's going on with the Hunger Task Force right after this.